friends, and welcome to Get Comfy with Laura, the podcast where we dive into getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'm your host, Laura Cardona, the Buena Vida life coach, emotional wizard, personal cheerleader, healing homie, breakthrough queen, and your support in shaping a Buena Vida. If you're ready for more than just listening, I've got all kinds of juicy goodies over at my website, buenavida.life, or come say hi on all the socials at Buena Vida Life Coach. Quick note for new listeners, because your time matters, I've trimmed the long hellos and intros so we can jump straight into the good stuff. Of course, all of our guest info, bio, links are in the show notes at the end of the episode and all over social media, so you won't miss a thing. All right, y'all, let's go get comfy with the uncomfy.
Get comfy with the uncomfy. Don't hide it. I feel it. El camino es crecer. I rise again. Get comfy with the uncomfy. That's where I find me.
For about 20 years before I found this calling of being the Buena Vida life coach, I worked as a freelancer in TV and film. I was an independent contractor, so I worked through contracts for a year, for a couple months, contract for a couple weeks. It varied. In the beginning of that career, I had to get very well versed on taxes, but what I didn't get myself well versed on were my employment rights, and that led to me being taken advantage of because I didn't know my rights. There's invoices that didn't get paid, late invoices, unpaid overtime. There was a lot of things, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And at the core of it, I didn't want to know because I knew that if I rocked the boat, I wouldn't work. That's where it comes down to. Here's the thing, y'all. That's not where it's at. There are protections. There are laws in place for the employee-employee relationship. That's what we're talking about today. I'm so excited about this conversation with Laura Rodriguez. She is an employment lawyer based in New York. I'm so excited to have this conversation with her about how we can start getting comfortable with advocating for ourselves in the workplace. Let's get into it. If you had to explain employment law to someone who didn't know what it was, how would you explain?
Well, what I say when people ask me what type of law I practice and I say employment law, the next step is to say that I handle cases that have to do with, to put it in very simple terms, with unlawful and bad things that happen in the workplace. So I usually represent plaintiffs, which would be employees, and I usually represent them in cases where they are being underpaid or exploited in some way, or they have harassment or discrimination claims, or sometimes if they've been let go, looking at why that was, negotiating severance, really advocating for the worker in basically anything that comes up in the day-to-day at work. Sometimes the things that people raise are not legal claims, but usually there are legal claims that people, like if people think that something is wrong, there's a reason they're feeling that way, and there's usually something to explore. And so I try to help people work through those issues using the law. And sometimes I do represent employers as well. I'll represent employers who've been sued by employees to help them navigate that process, or to help employers with their handbooks and their policies to make sure that they are following the law and doing what they need to do to have an appropriate, ethical, lawful workplace.
Yeah. So many, I want to share my feelings are, it's funny because it's reactions that I had when I was freelancer. I told you that I used to be a freelancer, and a lot of fear comes up. A lot of like, letting go. It was let go because I was freelancer. So if I'm out, someone will come in right after me and take the gig. Being let go, not being paid, being underpaid. And there was just
Oh,
a lot that it's really interesting. A lot came up in my body. I was like, whoa, whoa, I don't know what all those feelings are. It's really
it's
something.
really scary. Yeah. It is really scary. And, I really understand why people hesitate to proceed with any sort of legal action or contact a lawyer. Sometimes things have been going on for years. But, you know, if you are out of work, you possibly don't have any income. And if you don't have any income, that affects every single aspect of your life. So I completely understand why there is fear. And the concerns about the fact that if I say something and I lose my job and somebody else finds out, then I don't get another job, and like the sort of ripple effect that there could be. I understand completely where that comes from. What I try to tell clients when they say that is that, well, one, that often if you contact your employer about some sort of legal issue, or an attorney contacts them on your behalf, they try to keep that. Often they're embarrassed, or they're worried about like further problems. So it's not something that they go telling everybody. So like the impact that it could have on future work is usually not as significant as it feels like it might be. Obviously, every situation is different. But a lot of times things don't get past that one interaction. The other thing is that, retaliating against somebody for bringing up legal violations is also unlawful. So if there is retaliation, that's another lawsuit we could file, or new claims that we can add to a lawsuit that was already filed. And, that it could take time to reach a resolution there, but the law protects workers against being completely controlled by the employer. And, all the state employment laws are different. I'd say probably New York and California are the two states that have really extensive protections for employees. They're overall very employee friendly. So there's a lot there's a lot there to protect you if you decide you want to proceed with something. Other states, the protections vary, but there are employment laws in all states. And like I said, there is also the federal law, and the federal law covers everybody. So there's a lot that can help you. And if it's about wages, minimum wage, overtime, those are very straightforward claims. Like either you were paid a certain way or you weren't. And so those are more like black and white claims to be addressing. And even that is scary to like speak up if you think that you weren't paid overtime, or you weren't paid overtime. But at the end of the day, it's not something that you can debate. And so those cases can be very successful, I guess, for the employee is what I'm saying, because the documentation needs to be there, and it's the employer's burden, to have those records. And if they don't, then that's something that they have to explain to the court. And so those types of cases are scary, but can be resolved in a pretty straightforward manner, in a way that, sometimes could really change somebody's life with the types of like the money that can be recovered. A lot of my work is representing also like immigrant and undocumented workers who've been underpaid, who haven't gotten overtime ever, and have been working in the same place for years. And then with the way that the damages work and the math, you could recover many, many thousands of dollars for somebody, which can change their whole life. And, that is something that I feel really good about doing, because that's money that you're entitled to if you did the work, and you deserve to be paid for what you do. One thing I really like is a lot of times I'll help a client, and then, they now know what their rights are, and so they'll tell a family member or a friend, and there'll be somebody who has been in a bad situation for a very long time, who thought there was nothing they could do, and they actually can. And so, you know, having people, like, get the information they need to advocate for themselves is really empowering.
That's what we're doing here. Yes, yes, yes. So let's get to like sort of because there's so many follow-up questions, but in my mind, I'm trying to think of like a situation. Okay, so homegirl, Fulanita goes, she found a job, and she did the interview. She did really well in the interview. She maybe, signed her, I haven't signed one in a long time. What is it? The I-9W2, whatever it is that you're signing, the paperwork.
Yeah.
She's going through it. She's at her work, and things just start her boss starts showing her the true colors, and he or she is kind of treating them unfairly. Again, there's so many situations, right? There's discrimination, unpaid overtime, but you just essentially you start feeling something's wrong. So is that fair to say, like, is that the part, or is even before? Like, and what I guess I'm trying to ask is, like, when can Fulanita, this homegirl, start being like, okay, I'm going to start watching. I'm going to start paying attention to what's going on here, because now I know that I'm protected, and we'll get to how they're protected. But what are they
Mhm.
looking out for, essentially? Like, what are the red flags?
I mean, I would say that you should always be watching. I don't want people to be paranoid, but they do need to be vigilant because nobody is really going to look out for you but yourself when you're at work. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's the reality. And so, if there are things, I think at the beginning, you don't know if it's really a problem or not. And maybe you misunderstood something, or maybe it's not what it looked like. But if you start to I mean, I always suggest that people write things down, take notes, keep a journal, like in your if you have an iPhone in your notes app, just like write things down, because if you can then show a pattern, that's something that could be really helpful if you want to take legal action, and or if you just want to go to HR, however you want to handle it. If you have specific examples you can point to, that makes a big difference. And a lot of times, most people don't go to work thinking that they're going to sue their employer. So they're not necessarily tracking things. They just then, things get so bad that they contact me, for example, and they have these like memories of things being uncomfortable, but it's hard to say when something happened or what exactly happened or who saw it. And you can still proceed with a claim when there isn't specific like hard evidence, because your word is also valid. But if you also have notes that you took when you were working, that makes your claim even stronger. If you have like contemporaneous records of different things that occurred that were hurtful or that made you uncomfortable or that were unlawful, being able to present that makes a huge difference, because whoever the bad actor was probably was not paying attention and doesn't remember the exact dates that X, Y, or Z happened. And they well, one, it'll be very hard for them to disprove it. And two, it just having specifics really lends credibility to your claim. And so I think writing things down, keeping track as much as you can is really important. And if you talk to other people, talk to people that you trust and tell them about it, they could also vouch for you later. A lot of times look I'll have clients share their text messages because they texted their best friend, like, about something that happened at work
Mm.
one day. And so they have that text message from 2 years ago, and that's something that we could use as evidence. And so also, please don't delete your text messages. I that comes up a lot with clients. Like, my mom deletes her text messages right after she sends them. No matter what I tell her, her emails, she's just always like, "Oh, I need, why do I need this?" And, my mom is not working right now in a workplace, so I guess it's fine. But she's like my constant reminder of what you never know why you would need them. And I don't want to make people paranoid, but especially if there's workplace issues that are happening and you've spoken to somebody about them, keep those messages as much as you can, because that could be really helpful evidence in the future.
That's great. It's funny about the texting, that don't delete your text messages. There's a cloud full of text messages in the air. It has enough space on the phones to keep it.
Exactly.
My mom does the same thing, and I'm like, Mom, there's enough space on your phone, I promise you. Uh, so there's something that I sort of want to back up, which that really spoke to me, which is that your voice counts. Well, there's two sort of ways that I want to go at it. It's one, I actually want to pause and speak to the paranoia, Because it's true, right? The way that we're talking, we're like, keep tabs on everybody, have receipts, y'all, keep the receipts, keep the receipts on everything that's going on at work. But it's also like, yeah, because unfortunately, folks are kind of trying to take advantage of us. Like they do want that, right? And it's unfortunate to talk like that. I don't like speaking about it like that because it's very disempowering. It makes me feel disempowered, and I don't want anyone to listen to this feeling that they're disempowered. The reason we're talking about it in this way, and this is why I'm pausing to say this, is it's to get us to a place of empowerment where we're like, no, I do have rights. My voice
Mm,
does count. I actually am protected. That's what we're trying to
exactly.
get to here. So I just wanted to sort of drop that in a little bit.
No,
And
I
I,
think that's a really important point. Exactly. I think it's about stepping into the power that you have. And I would say, I said don't delete your text messages, take notes, but like I also don't think it's helpful or healthy to like go to the point where you're tracking things in a way that disrupts your day to day. Like just jot down a note if there's something that stands out. I would not go around like actually recording conversations with people necessarily. One, because, a lot of times there are laws, like every state has different laws around that. Um, and two, because there are things there that help the case, but then there's also things that hurt the case. And like it's if you're getting to the point of where you're like so focused on trying to like prove that something bad is happening, then you're not really focused on your work anymore. And if it's at the point that you feel like you need to track things to that level, then you should speak to an attorney and then have the attorney come up with a plan with you about what to do in that specific situation. But I think that early on, if you're just going through your day, there's some things that make you raise an eyebrow, jot down a note or two and keep an eye on it. But it shouldn't get to the point that it's completely shifting how you're functioning. If it's at that point, then you should be speaking to a lawyer because at that point it's having a significant impact on your life.
yeah.
So
I,
I agree. I don't want to make people, just get crazy.
no, no, that's not what we're doing here. That's not what we're doing here, y'all.
People have rights. People have rights, and you have the right to assert your rights. And so do that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I want to get to. So Fulanita, we're back with Fulanita at her job, and now she's been there for about a year, and she's been keeping track of a couple things that are just a little wrong. Let's go with the. And again, there's so many situations. We're just going to use one here because we have a limited amount of time. She's been working weekends and not getting paid for a while. So she's feeling. She asked
Mhm.
her boss, and they're like, "Yeah, no, we're going to get to it. It's something payroll is backed up. Let's just say something like that." And it just kind of keeps happening. What's her first step? What is what who where what does she do there?
Well, in a situation like that, like I said before, when it has to do with not getting paid, that's something that's very
Straight
tangible.
cut.
Like if somebody says something, like different people can interpret words in different ways, but either you received the money or you didn't. And so if your employer is saying, "Oh, you did work and I haven't paid you, but I'll get to it," then that's the type of thing where you write that down. Maybe send a follow-up email. Um, I did have a case recently where somebody had that exact situation where she kept getting paid partial payments. Like the employer kept being like, "Oh, well, I can't pay you the full amount. I'm going to pay you a couple $100 now, like $1,000 next week," but like kept never paying the full amount. And there kept just piling up more back wages that were owed.
Oh,
So every time she got paid, she would respond to the person who paid her and be like, "Okay, I got paid this much. This is how much you still owe me," and just kept a running tab. And that made it very easy for us to proceed with a claim in court explaining exactly how much money she's owed because every time she sent that email, they confirmed that they owed her that money. And there's no question that they needed to pay her and they didn't. And so something like that, it's helpful to send a confirmation email, have some sort of written record that both parties are aware of and also know that, when you work, you are entitled to pay for all of the hours that you work. And so if they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just this one time. It's a weekend. Do me a favor. Like we need your help." They need your help, but you should get paid. And if you feel uncomfortable asking for it, then, um, I mean, once it becomes like, you should be paid for all of the work you do. If for some reason you're in a situation where it's like this one time I'm gonna do a favor, then that's one thing. But if it gets to the point that it's a pattern, then that's a lot of money and time, and they're getting free labor. And so you absolutely are entitled to pay for that, and you should tell them that and speak to an attorney.
You're right. So, keep receipts. That's what I keep hearing, y'all. Keep receipts. Keep all your receipts. Keep all your texts. Uh, I can think of how many times I sent emails and follow-ups and it became exhausting, so I gave up.
Mhm.
What do you say
Yeah.
to someone who's just like, I can't keep doing this and working and, holding my family together? And then, what do you do with that? Like I don't I know not necessarily that doesn't necessarily land in your arena, but that has to happen, right? Because that's a lot of it's just exhausting to have to chase after these
It is.
people sometimes.
It is. It is exhausting. It's exhausting, and sometimes, yeah, life is overwhelming. It's not exactly the same, but I can say that for myself, a few years ago, I was in an accident. I was crossing the street and I got hit by somebody riding a bike, which seems like maybe it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but something about the way the impact was, like I went flying, I fell, I broke my elbow. And I needed surgery, and I have like pins in my elbow now. It was a pretty significant injury. And I'm a lawyer. I know that that's a personal injury claim. I honestly was so overwhelmed by everything that I was like, I can't deal with this. I was like, yes, I could like go after this person and get them to pay for this injury. And apparently like elbow injuries can be worth a lot of money. I just let it go, and I did have family that was, like, asking me about it, and, like, coworkers were asking me about it, but, like, at that moment, like, I couldn't fit that into my brain as one more thing to navigate, and I preferred to just, go I luckily had health insurance, that paid for the surgery. I mean, I did have to pay some money, but I was able to do that, and just, what I decided that I wanted to do was just move on and not think about it. Um, in retrospect, now I get frustrated sometimes because I could have also really used that money. Um, but I understand people just not having the bandwidth. I totally understand it. I was there. I was completely there, and, I like to think that I get good karma somewhere along the line for, you know, but I know what that feeling is, and so I think that it's a balance. I say keep receipts, but I will also say that it is very rare. I mentioned this client who had like all of the records from the times that she was underpaid, but it is very rare that clients come in with all the receipts. So even if you don't have the receipts, you can still proceed. A lot of times I have, like I said, I do have a lot of undocumented clients, in New York, like there's a lot of small businesses, a lot of places and a lot of immigrants and undocumented workers. So, and they're the ones that are often not treated correctly and not paid lawfully. A lot of times they don't have any records, they're paid in cash, they don't get any sort of receipt. Everything is discussed verbally, but we still are able to proceed with their claims. So it's okay if you don't have those records. It can be helpful and it can make my job easier if you do have them, but that shouldn't stop you if something is happening that is unlawful. If you're not getting paid what you should be getting paid, then you should still speak to an attorney. And a lot of times, what I like to think of myself as doing is kind of taking some of that pressure off because, like, it is really hard to advocate for yourself in that way constantly. And so once somebody hires me, I'm the one that's tracking all of that down and figuring that all out. And it's not something that you have to be, I mean, you have to share what you have with me, but like I take on a lot of that burden. And so a lawyer can really help ease that difficulty for you.
Incredible.
So it's worth talking to somebody who also can help you, or if you're still at the workplace and you do need to gather information, come up with a plan, figure things out so it's not just something that's weighing on you by yourself and stressing you out more and more and more.
I feel like I can't think of the story right now, but I know that I've had them, and how many times I'm like, well, that could have paid for the at least a physical therapy. That would have paid for your
Mhm.
physical therapy. Maybe it
Yeah.
wouldn't hurt as much right now if you would have been able to take some time off work so you can get physical therapy. You know what I mean? There's all these sort of, it does add
Mhm.
up. It's really something. So what are sort of our basic protections? So like, okay, now we know there are protections, and what, yeah, and I don't even know if that's too big of a question. What are our basic? Like what I'm hearing is every hour that you work for an employer, you're supposed to get paid. Believe it or not, that sounds like, ah, because again, they want you to work for free. They want you to clean up your station before you punch in. And it's like, but I'm cleaning up for you. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Like, no,
Yeah.
that's so just that. I feel like that's the number one that I took from everything that we've been talking about is you are supposed to be paid for every hour that you work for an employer. Okay, so that's
Yes.
one. What are some other ones? Say again?
Every minute. Every minute.
Every minute. Every minute, y'all. Okay, so we got that.
Every minute. A lot of times people will have a schedule that's set beforehand that says, 9 to 5. And so they'll just get paid for 9 to 5. But really, they started working at 8:45 and they work till 5:30, but the pay is just based on what the written schedule is. That's wrong. You should be paid for every minute. Those extra minutes really add up. Um, and most people, well, I won't, a lot of people are also owed overtime. There are people who are exempt from overtime, and a lot of people in professional jobs are just paid a set salary, and it's legal to pay them a set salary. But many times people think that it's okay to be receiving a salary when really they should be getting paid overtime because the laws around who gets to receive a salary versus not are very nuanced and specific, and they don't cover as many people as you may think. And so if you're getting paid a salary, um, maybe you should be getting paid hourly. And if you should be getting paid hourly, then you are owed overtime. So just because you're getting paid a salary doesn't mean everything's okay. There are a lot of times that people are paid a salary and they think that that's it, that they're not able to collect overtime. There are also minimum salary thresholds that's different. There's a federal threshold, and then the states have different ones. And so a lot of times people are getting paid a salary, but it's less than what the law says the minimum salary should be. So in New York, there's a pretty high salary threshold, and a lot of people are paid a salary that seems okay, but it's actually lower than what New York labor law says. So there's a very good chance that you're owed money if you are working anywhere in this country because there's a lot of very specific wage payment laws that are applicable. Not everybody has a claim, but more people have a claim than you may think.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that you can recover damages going back a couple of years. In New York, you can go back 6 years. So 6 years from when you file a claim, you can collect unpaid wages or you can file a claim for anything that's happened within the past 6 years.
Can I interrupt you? What do you mean? So, meaning a job that I had 6 years ago, I can go back to. Is that what you're talking about?
So, yes, you can go back a maximum of 6 years. So anything that happened more than 6 years ago, it's been too long, you can't do anything about that. But if something happened less than 6 years ago, it's people think like, oh, well, I'm not working there anymore, there's nothing I can do. But actually, it's okay if you're not working there as long as it's within that 6 year framework.
Okay.
And it's 6 years in New York. In other states, it's only 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So it varies state by state, but you don't have to be working at the job that you're at if to bring a legal claim against them. It's usually better that you're not working there because it's just uncomfortable to be working somewhere that you are suing. But if you are working there, they're not allowed to fire you for or retaliate against you for bringing a legal claim. So you're protected. It's just It's awkward and not something that most people wanna do, but sometimes they do want to stay working there, and they have every right to continue working there. So, it's I get a little bit of both. Some people are like, "Well, I don't work there anymore, there's nothing I can do," and that's not the case. Often you can, and other people think that because they're working there, they can't bring a lawsuit or they can't bring a legal claim because, the employer will treat them differently. The employer might treat you differently, but if they do, that's illegal. So, there's 100 different ways to do it, and you have a right to assert your legal rights, which is very repetitive.
No, it's not. Let's keep saying it over and over again. So I'm hearing your paid wages, you have, if whatever, whether you work or not work, you have 6 years, at least in New York, because it's by state,
Mm,
right? New York City. So
mm.
there's not a federal threshold.
Federally, that's 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
When I file a lawsuit, I go to federal court and I bring claims using both the federal laws and the state laws. So it depends on what the law is in each state.
So let's go back to the paid wages, the 6 years. They can't retaliate against you because that's also unlawful. What are some other, these are all sort of have to do with wages. Is there something else that's very common that we don't know about?
Well, I guess something else another type of case that I have a lot of is cases that have to do with discrimination or sexual harassment. And those cases are sometimes more complicated because, it's not about whether or not you worked certain hours or got paid certain amounts. It's about how you were treated. And that can be interpreted in many different ways often. But there are, again, a lot of protections that people have, and there are protections against many, many different types of discrimination in New York. If we're talking about New York specifically, again, there's a whole host of protections for people in all different types of categories. One thing I will say, though, is that something that feels like it should be illegal that isn't illegal is basically bullying. Bullying is not illegal. I don't know how else to say it but that. And it's really complicated to talk to clients about sometimes because, if you go to work and you're screamed at every day and like if someone says mean things to you, that's an awful thing to have to deal with. But unfortunately, it's not illegal unless the mean things that they're saying are tied to a protected category. So if they're saying mean things to you, just that,
You're
you're
slow.
annoying.
Yeah.
You're annoying or you're slow, that's not illegal. But if they're saying that you're annoying because you're Latina and Latinas suck, then that's illegal. Or if they say something about like your religion or your race, all the different categories that are protected by the discrimination laws, and you have a claim. But unfortunately, I have had situations where people, um, their managers just didn't like them, and they made their work days really uncomfortable, and it was a very toxic situation. But just because it's toxic doesn't mean it's illegal. And I don't like having to break that news, but it is a reality that comes up a lot. So when people feel like they are being discriminated against, that requires a bit of a detailed sit down conversation to really figure out exactly what's happening. But if you feel unsure, you should talk to a lawyer because sometimes you don't realize, or you think that there isn't discrimination, but the more we look at it and we realize that you're the only one treated this way, and you're the only woman, or like they make comments about you being pregnant, there could be a discrimination claim as well that you didn't realize in the moment, and so it's really worth like talking to an attorney about and really sitting down and figuring out because those cases are harder to navigate, but they're very, very fact specific. So you really do have to sit down and really talk about what happened with somebody to figure it out because a good employment lawyer will be able to really parse through what you're saying and figure out if there is a claim there or not.
With that, because it's so delicate, both with sexual harassment and discrimination, and as you're saying, there are protections in place, and there are some protections that aren't in place. Uh, I want to make sure that whoever's listening and they're feeling like that, there is support before they even talk to a lawyer. If they're scared of that, there's people that can come talk to me. There's a lot of people out there that can have support to talk it
Yes.
out first, right? So
Yes, you don't have to go straight to a lawyer. I do think it's worth talking to somebody that you trust and that can help you navigate the situation. And if and when you are ready to talk to a lawyer, I do think it's worth having that conversation, even just to like, if you go speak to somebody, you have a consultation, and you find out you don't have a legal claim, at least you know,
yeah,
and then you can figure out how else to proceed. I think it's worth figuring out. Um, Something else that is worth noting, I think, is that most employment lawyers um, take definitely wage cases and often discrimination cases as well on a contingency fee basis, which means that you don't have to pay outright for the lawyer to represent you, which is another reason that people avoid speaking to lawyers.
thank you, because I was going to
But
ask you.
yeah, so, I told you I have all these low wage workers, like, I can't be, like, billing them, they weren't paid, and now I'm telling them to pay me, like, and so most of those cases are done on a contingency fee basis, which means that whatever amount of money is recovered, a portion of that goes directly to the lawyers to pay for the fees. So it's like, that happens with personal injury cases as well. And like sometimes you'll see like ads, it's like you don't get paid unless we don't get paid unless you do, or we don't get paid unless we win. But that's basically what it is. It's like if we're able to recover any sort of payment for you, then we'll get paid. And so it makes it financially feasible to hire a lawyer, and also you're kind of in it together because a higher settlement is better for the client, it's better for me, it's better for everybody. And so it's it's something that you navigate together without having to, also have a huge hit to your finances.
That's awesome. I'm so glad because that you went into that, because I could hear some of my listeners be like, "Well, I have money for a lawyer." I would have said that back in the day. I would be like, "Who has money for
Yeah,
a lawyer? Like, I got to pay my
I
rent, my
would have
Metro
said that
card."
too.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. So thank you for that, because that's just yet another way that you're empowered. You have someone on your team that's working with you, not against you.
Mhm.
So, and I want to circle back to the like all the protections. Feel like you mentioned the paid wages, the threshold, retaliations, discrimination, and I think we could keep going, right? But mostly the big point is that there are protections, and there are places, there are people who can empower you, there's support, and there's even sort of steps that you can get to. If something's going on with work, then let's talk about it. Here now, we have two people here who are talking about it, having a conversation about it, and saying, okay, there's a way to get to a place where you're going to feel more empowered.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So there it is. So now flipping the script to, because of time constraints,
Of
to our
course.
sisters who are business owners. So now the flip side,
Mhm.
they own a business and they have employees. What are some protections? How can they foster, sort of create an environment where they're fair, where they're getting paid, their employees are getting paid? I don't want to say everyone's happy, because that's relative, but like there's just it's a good juju in there, good juju in the workplace. Like what do they do?
Well, I mean, I think that's the ideal workplace. And I think that what they do is before you hire anybody, you should talk to a lawyer and make sure that you have the right framework and things set up so that you can move forward confidently. Um, as I've mentioned, different states have different laws. New York has a lot of very complicated and nuanced laws that are actually changing almost every year. So it's a lot for anybody to keep up with. And a lot of times I have had situations where people are sued who didn't know that they were doing something wrong. Unfortunately, that's not an excuse in the eyes of the law. If you are an employer, it's your responsibility to know that. So, when you're running a business, there's so many things to keep track of that it's very hard to also make sure that you also know about the changes to the labor law that were implemented 6 months ago. So it's recommended that you have an employment law attorney walk you through things, help you create an employee handbook that has all the things that it needs to have in it, and make sure that you're doing things by the book. Because, one of the things that also comes up is that sometimes people would think that it's easier to just pay cash or just like pay somebody under the table because that's what the employee wants and it's easier for tax purposes to not have to go through all that paperwork. But if you don't have everything documented correctly, if anything goes wrong, it's going to be so much more costly for you later to have to defend against any sort of like audit or legal action if you don't have everything done correctly from the beginning. And I think it's an investment that is worthwhile to make sure that things are done in accordance with the law, because it may be something where you're able to save a little bit of time and some money in the short term, but there's always the risk that something goes wrong and then it's going to be so much more complicated later on. And the other thing that I can say, having represented a lot of workers, is that most people don't have all the information about what their rights are. Most average employees don't know what all the laws are. And they often contact lawyers when they feel like that they've been mistreated. Like if it's something with pay, like we said, that's something that is easy to track. But if you feel like someone has wronged you, a lot of times that feeling of hurt is what leads people to contact an attorney. And as I mentioned, bullying is not illegal. But if somebody calls me because they were bullied by their manager, they might not have a legal claim for that bullying, but after we talked for a few minutes, I realized that they do have this other legal claim. And so, like, the best thing that you can do is treat your workers well, like, treat them right, make sure that they feel respected and valued, because people who feel respected and valued don't usually want to then sue their employer. Even if they have a legal claim. I know a lot of people who have very strong possible claims against their employer, but they're like, "Oh, no, but, that employer, like, had my back when this happened, or they always really cared about me, so I could never sue them." And there is that feeling of appreciation that really, I think, at the end of the day, is what matters the most. Like, if you treat people well, they're not gonna want to, for the most part. There are always outliers and things can go wrong, but the best thing to do is to treat everyone well, because if you treat everyone well, they're not gonna want to then go to court or fight you or call attorneys. And it's when they call attorneys that things get dug up and that things get very complicated. And defending a lawsuit when you're an employer is very costly. It can cost a lot of money, and it is very hard to, um, quote unquote, win, because usually usually there is something that you have to pay to the employee and to your attorneys, and the best thing to do is just avoid that completely.
By being good to your employees.
I mean, having all the right, like, handbooks and policies is great, but if you have all the right handbooks and policies, but you still are mean or disrespectful, then people are going to call attorneys, and sometimes there'll be frivolous lawsuits that are filed, but you still have to defend it. And you only have to defend it because you were mean to your employee. And when you defend it, you have to pay your attorney, and it's just like it just all snowballs. So the best thing to do is just be good to your employees.
Be good to your employees. And like it, and both as an employer and employee, know your rights. So, because maybe you hired someone and then they start showing up late, and I'm sure that that has happened. You open up your
Yes.
business and now your employees start showing up late and drunk, and you're like, what? Can I fire her? Like, what do I do here? She's not working. Know your rights,
Yes,
because right. So there's
absolutely.
that.
You're right. Yes, and that's a really important thing too. It's not always a situation that it's the employer that's done something wrong. There are employees who are doing things wrong often as well. And the focus has been the opposite with what I've been saying. But I've had many situations where employers are trying to do the right thing, and they have a worker who just is, doing a bad job, or yeah, showing up drunk, or like breaking policies. Like
There's a
there's so
lot.
many things could be happening. And what I would say in that situation is that if there is something that you're noticing where somebody has done something wrong, again, like going back to keeping receipts, document it and bring it up. The problem that I've seen employers fall into is often when they try to like be good and like it treat people right, but also know your rights and protect yourself. Because I've had situations where people want to, like, they're like, oh, well, I don't want to, let them go, or like have a stern talk with them because like they're going through something difficult, or I feel bad. And like you're afraid to have those difficult conversations. But if you avoid those difficult conversations, then it usually something else happens, and then they're like, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Or then something happens that puts an employee in a protected category, so you really can't let them go.
What I just keep hearing is know your rights, get educated, get into, I mean, really the whole point of this, right, is to start getting comfortable with like looking into these things, because you do have protection, because your voice counts, you count, whether you're undocumented, immigrant, however you identify, wherever you are, you're here. There are things in this country that protect us. There
Yes,
are.
and
They're
you're
here.
undocumented, if you're undocumented, it doesn't matter that you're undocumented. The laws around work protect you. The first moment you start working, you have to be paid in accordance with those laws. Like a lot of employers are like, "Oh, well, you don't have papers, so I can't pay you the minimum wage." Yes, they can and they have to. Or, "Oh, you don't have papers, so you're not going to get overtime." It doesn't matter. You're entitled to all of that, and that's not you have rights. At the
Woo!
end of the day, you have rights.
We have workers' rights, people. We have workers' rights.
Yeah.
So, okay, because we could keep going, going, going. There's so much information. Thank you so much for all this. It's been so, it's amazing. I love it. What can
I'm
people
glad.
do in whatever state they're in, now knowing federal law, knowing state law, to sort of either keep tabs on what's going on, or are there resources? Like, how can someone just sort of keep themselves in the loop of their own rights at the workplace?
If you wanna look at updates from the Department of Labor, that is something. There's federal and there's state Department of Labors. I get emails. They send, like, bulletins with, like, changes to the law. You can sign up for something like that if you want to get that information. Not all of it will be relevant to you, but some of it will be. People can follow me, but, I don't necessarily have things that are relevant to the entire country, but I promise you that there are attorneys in your state that do have an Instagram page that they're working really hard to keep active and updated. So feel free to follow me. Feel free to ask me questions, because even if you're not in New York or New Jersey, I have information that I could potentially share. And I know a lot of people in a lot of different places. So I would be happy to connect people with somebody that's more local to them if that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for offering that, because one, someone would be like, oh, well, she's in New York and I can't ask the question. Well, even if you just follow the pages, they might show something where something will come up. Just let the information sort of land on you. Just sort of let it be there for you, both as an employer where you're hiring people or you're being hired or you're freelance. I mean, there's different categories,
Exactly.
right? There's
Mhm.
going to be information out there and hear it and you're like, oh, that's a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, okay. Tax
Yeah.
time, taxes, the tax man, there's all these things. So even just that a quick Google, right? I feel is what just
Yeah.
coming from my non-lawyer background of Googling it, just being like, what is this? Talking to a friend, talking to me, and now you have this beautiful resource of Laura Rodriguez. And where can they find you again? How can people connect
So
with you?
my Instagram handle is my name, so laurarodriguez.esq for Esquire, so laurarodriguez.esq. My law firm is Frontera Law Firm, so, there's information there as well. FronteraLawFirm.com, laurarodriguez.esq on Instagram, and I'd be happy to chat.
Amazing. Thank you. This is just wonderful. Thank you, Laura. That was really something. I mean, just, I'm sure the people that walk into your offices are just like, what? I don't know anything. And I, in truth, let me be transparent. I'm thinking of my younger self being like, how wonderful would it have been to come across you when I was younger. I almost feel like crying because I was like, you know how much help I needed? I didn't know anything. I was this
Yeah,
little
I mean,
freelance
most
girl.
people don't. I didn't either, and luckily I was not in really like bad work situations, but there were things that like should have been different. Before I went to law school, had never really spoken to lawyers, and it's not something I would have thought to do. It's very intimidating,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Y'all are scary, but you're not scary. So that's the great part. You're not scary. Amazing. Right. There you have it, friends. Employment law. What's it about? Protecting workers when unlawful things happen at work. If you work any minute, any hour, you get paid. Every minute. If something feels off, you don't have to spiral. But you do need to pay attention like everything else. Keep notes, keep receipts, keep texts. You don't need to live in paranoia, but you do need to stay empowered. And for my business owners listening, the call is the same. Know the laws, get the right policies in place, treat your people with respect. Because that good workplace juju, it's protection, it's leadership, and it's how you build something sustainable. Let's get comfortable with advocating for ourselves. Let's get curious, ask the questions, Google the thing, talk to someone you trust, save the receipts, contact a lawyer, follow the Department of Labor. There's so many things. You could listen to this episode again if you need to. Stay informed, because whether you're an employee, a freelancer, undocumented, a new hire, the boss, whatever you are, you have rights, and we all deserve a workplace where we are treated like we matter. I'll see you in the next episode.
Get comfy with the uncomfy. That's where the magic begins.
Thank you for tuning in and spending some time with me today. And we all know the podcast spiel. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to subscribe, follow, rate, drop a little love in the reviews. It really does help, and it helps spread the word. And hey, if you know someone who needs this, any of this, in their ears right now, please share the episode with them. And if you're ready for more than just listening, ready to shift, to stretch, to step into your own buena vida, then let's do this, yeah? From one-to-one personalized coaching to group coaching, fun workshops, and all kinds of other little goodies, all the info is waiting for you over at my website, www.buenavida.life, or connect with me on the gram at Buena Vida Life Coach.
I'm getting comfy in the uncomfy, dancing with the night until it holds me. Breath by breath, I let it flow. Even in the dark, my light will show.
You made it to the end, and here is the very last message. You can hold the hard. You can hold the discomfort. You can hold all that and still reach for joy and still reach for good. You can be scared and still keep going. You can get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And when you don't feel like you can, come find me. Until next time, friends, keep going, keep growing, show the world who you are, and never, ever stop betting on you. Thank you for listening to Get Comfy with Laura. This episode is brought to you by me, Laura Cardona. Producer, me. Researcher, me. Audio engineer, me. Editor, me. Social media, me. Expert, me. Giving myself credit where credit is due. For more, head over to buenavida.life. Bye!